Hey y'all, it's Wildcat 6305 coming at you from Ike's Treehouse outside of Augusta, Georgia. Today, just want to review the game I've been playing for the last couple months now. As I mentioned in my last video, I'll be relocating here soon, so I'm about to tear this all down, and everybody knows how much fun breaking down Axis and Allies or a Global War game is. But before I do that, I just kind of wanted to recap because I'm stopping mid game. I'm stopping right where it's starting to get good, and this is of course Global War 36 through 45. But just kind of show you timeline where we're at. We're at July 1939, and you can just kind of see the incomes and these extra ones here. I'm just kind of marking where you're at war, where your full production is on those. So there's like 2 FECs and 2 USs and Russians and stuff like that. So that's what that is. So kind of just briefly, so it's 1939, July 1939. So the Germans came in and they took France and activated the Vichy rule, and they also took out Poland. And then right behind that, the Russians came in and they took their side of Poland because they signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So that's in play. But before I get too far, that I just figured I'd show that real quick just as a teaser. But before I get too far into it, just real quickly, the expansions, I want to let you know the expansions I have because I want to kind of review my experience with these expansions so far, and like kind of what I've been doing. And so just real quick, I just want to rattle off what I was playing with. So I had Fighting Railways, Oil War, Spanish Civil War, Turkey at War, Manchukuo, Netherlands, River Monitors, Winter War Commanders, Partisans, Fascists in Croatia, Alaska Warriors, U.S. War Plans, which that one hadn't gotten activated yet, Marines, the Africa Corps, Sea Lion, Elite of the Reich, Elite of the Soviet Union. Let's see, what else? Minorities at War, Elite Fighters, and War Plan Z, which War Plan Z didn't get implemented, so I really can't speak a whole lot on that. I may have another video on that. I got to research War Plan Z. War Plan Z would have had to been, you got 3 options, like one game setup, one's 1938, one's 1939, and with it being July 39, we already missed trying to activate War Plan Z. But anyways, just kind of real high level, I just kind of want to give kind of a quick review of what I feel like each expansion did. Fighting Railways, I thought it was really good. It added in the ability of armored trains. That's probably like, and I'm just going to highlight things. I'm not playing with railway guns, but it adds rail tokens and armored trains, and I also added in some artillery pieces and flat train pieces. Really didn't get into the train car things as much, but I did get some rails built. And of course, like I said, I was playing both sides of this, and so I'm going to steal a terminology from my Scythe game down here, the Automa. That's what they call it. They have a version. You can see Scythe. I got that for Christmas this year, but the Automa, or I call it the Automa. It may be Automa, but I won't say Automa. So I was playing this Automa by myself. So I was both the Axis, Allies, and Comintern, which kind of works out because when it's your first game and you're new at it and you're trying to learn it, and it takes you a little bit, it's going to take you a couple hours to do a turn anyways, and you're playing on weeknights, you probably only have a couple hours. So it really kind of worked out where, I do the Germans on Monday night, and then it may be Tuesday or Wednesday night I come back and I do the Russians. And then Thursday night I'm doing the Japanese. So it kind of gives you enough time to remember the rules, not completely forget all of your strategy, what you're trying to do, yet also, you can still kind of surprise yourself every now and then, because kind of got a little bit of lag between what you did and what you're doing. But the railway markers, though, they were good. I built those a few times to connect rails. Those are 4 IPP and 8 IPP if you're building through a mountain territory. And I elected a rule of saying if you're building through a mountain territory, it was 2 turns. So it was 4 and 4. And I really enjoyed that because it was able to expand. When you're playing with some of the other rules, it allows you to expand some supply lines. Oil Wars. I really like Oil Wars. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy it. However, I feel like there needs to be some tweaking with it, because to me, and just taking it, like, surface level, looking at Oil Wars, I feel like oil should be more of an issue for the Axis than what it is, and even the UK, the British Commonwealth. However, I really didn't feel like oil was an issue, nor was it going to become an issue. So maybe there's some tweaking. I'm not sure about, as far as what if it's tweaking the amount of production, tweaking setup, or maybe just like the cost of what you spend oil on. Maybe you need to be spending oil for more things. Having your, like, spending oil for strategic rail move, like some of the things that are exempt from spending oil, maybe they need to spend oil. I don't know, but gotta do some scratching my head scratching to figure that out. But that was a good one. I really do enjoy that, because if anything, when you look at this, when you're the German player, I guess just if you're thinking if you were to have oil problems as a German player, which that's what Germany really was, having oil problems in the real war. And so you can kind of see why you'd want to go down there to attack and try to take southern Russia, and why Stalingrad would be a big deal trying to get into this, and then moving up to Moscow to take them out. Because you came down here to Transcaucasia and the Caucasus and took the oil fields, well, then you're in business to keep going, because you really don't have that much oil up here. So like I said, however, you can see some of my yellows or 5s, they're kind of stacked already, and I'm really not seeing that happening. So like I said, it may be something, I don't know. Got to do some head scratching on that one. Spanish Civil War. So the nationalists, the nationalist Spain, the Spanish nationals won the Civil War here. Ended up beating out their Republicans, thanks to the help of their German sponsors. I really like this expansion, and I'll just go ahead and skip to the Manchukuo one too. I felt like Spanish Civil War, and then the Manchukuo one, it allows you to start battling early in the game. And so, like, if you're a newer player, or this is your first time playing in a while, or whatever it is, you can kind of like have this microcosm of this theater going on before you actually get into a real battle. Because even though infantry and tanks are tanks, it's enough different. This game's enough different from Axis and Allies where you could get yourself hurt real quick if you're building an Axis and Allies army versus a global war army. You could find yourself hurting. And so that's what this does. Having this this mini war going on right here allows you to kind of softly step into this big pool, this big ocean of the game. This is kind of like a little kiddie pool that you can step in and be like, oh, let's do this. And so lessons you may learn of tactics and how to battle, how to build up your army, you can apply that throughout the rest, throughout the rest of the game and each other faction you have. But I felt like it was a really good addition. It gave you something to do, because that's why you set all this up, is so you can fight and invade each other and roll dice. And 1936, without it, you're not really doing that. And so that's where that expansion to the normal rules really kind of help you get involved with that. And then the Manchukuo, the thing I'd say with it is it expands these border clashes that the Japanese and Russians can have here. So it expands their border clashes, which also, once again, kind of same thing. It gets you used to rolling dice and figuring stuff out. It has a few other things as far as a few other subtleties, but this isn't a review the rule video. This is just kind of a high level what I did. Get back in order here. Turkey at War. I like this. This one was fun too, because after you play Axis and Allies for so long, Turkey's always sitting there and you got like 8 dudes on it, and nobody's doing anything around it because, oh well, it's neutral, and if you take Turkey, then it's going to flip all of them. Well, that ain't the case in this at all. So you start out, you're vying for influence, and everybody's trying to pay. Well, you have to pay 2 IPP to the bank. So then you can turn around and try to influence Turkey. And Turkey ended up going Axis in my game, which really it was coming down to between the Russians and the Axis. And you can kind of see how it's important to the Russians, because that's right there at their southern doorstep. And so, the Allies were in it too, but they weren't as far as the Axis and the Comintern. But you can kind of see where it's really important for both the Axis and the Comintern to get Turkey, because then that gives them a foothold in the Middle East, or it gives them, it's that southern border there to Russia, to those oil fields. It's quick access to them, and so that's one thing that I was kind of looking forward to. That was probably going to be the next thing. So the Germans annexed Romania, which gave the Soviets their free income roll. Just figured may as well, like a Band-Aid, go ahead and rip it off. Go ahead and take Romania, and maybe they roll low, but I don't think they did. But yeah, so the goal here of what was happening, and I'll just kind of go ahead and jump into this. So after you vie for Turkey's influence, Turkey is then kind of just sitting there, and they're a controlled minor. And if the Axis win it, then the Italians control it. If the Soviets win it, then obviously the Russians. And if the Allies win, then the French control Turkey. And they sit there unaligned until somebody attacks them, or they make a declaration of war. So I think Turkey is I think it's probably like the only minor, excluding the Chinese, I think it's like the only minor that can actually declare war on somebody, according to the rules, if I read it right, because that's what I did. Yeah, you can. So what happened here, and of course, the way you align is you got to both be at war with somebody. So what happened was when the Germans invaded France, and they declared war on the French, the Turks declared war on the French, and that aligned Turkey with the Germans. And at that point, so now they're aligned, but then Turkey goes from being controlled by the Italian player to now being aligned by the German player, which seemed really kind of weird to me. And I'm just glad I was the only person playing, because that made that a smooth transition. But yeah, so the overall plan, so the Germans taking Poland, probably the next thing they were going to do, and these guys are over here on these middle ones too, but the Germans were probably going to take an air transport, and they were going to load up a dude and just fly him over and land him in Turkey, and land him right here, because all these territories, because they had to take Romania, they had to go ahead and annex Romania, so then that would give them a direct path to fly into Turkey, and then they were going to drop their dude, which then they could So like the rule with Iraq is they'll align to the Germans if there's a German player in Axis, like right next to them. So that would be right next to Iraq, and so they were about to get that oil field and start messing up the flow of the Middle East there. Um, I don't think that counts as being the Vichy French. I don't think they would have lined with the Vichy French. Um, that didn't make sense to me to be the case. But yeah, so if I'm wrong, don't tell me I'm right. But if I'm wrong, you can let me know. But yeah, so I really enjoyed Turkey. That kind of gave it a different little flair because, like I said, it's usually like that big hunk of land that's just kind of you got to work around, and it kind of gives you something to do with it. The next one was Netherlands Fights Back. I was kind of on the fence about this one because really you're getting all these Netherlands pieces here and you're getting a couple right here. So on the surface of it, I'm like, why would you want to play with the Netherlands? Because as the rules state right now, the Netherlands, when they're attacked, then they become controlled by the British, and then the British get all their IPP, and then you don't have to split it up. However, the one thing, the Netherlands, it's 1939, and the Netherlands earn 1 IPP per turn. And so, let's see, so we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be the 7th turn. So the Netherlands are still not at war, so that's 7 IPP that they would have missed out on if you just let it sit. If anything, and that sounds kind of small, but in this game, to me, it feels like every IPP is worth $1 million. And so to me, that's where the Netherlands kind of really comes in. You already have the two, you already have the FEC and Anzac down here. So what's one more power? What's one more, 10 IPP warhorse down here? We would see, still kind of averting the jury's out on it, but I think it would have been good. I think there would be you probably would need some house rules, because I don't know if you would want factories and all, want to have to build a factory for them, or if you can. So one of the things that I was thinking, that I'm thinking about adding in as a house rule in future games is maybe like some joint use facilities type thing. Maybe give the Dutch a special rule where they can pay the British, an oil. If you're playing with oil rules, they can pay an oil and use their factory to build something. I don't know. That's just kind of spitballing. Really hasn't pen to paper on anything on that yet, but I don't know. I could see if you did that. I could see the playing with the Dutch. It wouldn't feel like it's a disadvantage playing with it for the British, and yet it would give you enough to where, because if you got to save up for 10 IPP to build a factory before you start building like real troops and not just little piddly stuff, that's going to be a long game. But yeah, but like I said, I thought it was kind of good. It like I said, if anything, you start collecting that IPP for them sooner. River monitors, I felt like that was really kind of a minor expansion, and I would say the same thing about fighting railways. Really kind of a minor expansion, because this just gives you the ability to build river boats, which are 1 IPP, and then they fight. And so your river boat pairs with the guy. So when you're crossing a river, it cuts out the -1. So it can pair one. It can pair one with land units to reduce. Yeah, is it land units or infantry? Yeah, land units to negate the attacker penalty for crossing a river. So that's where that kind of comes in. How much IPP do you want to spend to negate a penalty? Winter War, thought this was kind of fun. It kind of gave you something, kind of gave you some extra troops, gave you ski troops, and just kind of gave you, the Soviets came in and took this, and while we're sitting here looking at this, I'll go ahead and mention in the elite of the Soviet Union, you're not supposed to get a guards unit out in Finland. That's that's one of the exemption zones where you don't get a guards unit. But I promise you, the 3 infantry here and factory wiped out like an entire army of Russians, and I probably had like 9 casualties on it, and I'm like, you know what? That's the essence of what this rule about having a guard is. I mean, the Finnish took out everything and left 1 tank. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to take it, but I took it, and I'm like, that needs to be in the guard. So I'm like, I don't care. I'm breaking the rule. We're going to do it. Like, I'm playing by myself. I can't complain to myself about myself. Well, I could, but that's some real problems. But yeah, but this was fun. Nice little addition to it. That was really kind of a rule set that was there. Some of the rules were kind of halfway vague here, but it was good. Commanders were good. It just kind of, really the commanders just give a +1 bonus. There's more to it, but just in essence, they give a +1 on attack or defense. And I thought it was a good little addition. Didn't feel too powerful for anything. Just kind of because you start out with a few and you get them slowly. I thought that was, like I said, I thought it was a pretty good addition there. Partisans. So I have mixed feelings on the surface with this one, because the one thing that I like about Axis and Allies, and even just base global war, is the whole concept opposed to risk, where when you take a territory and risk, you have to leave you have to leave a guy there. So essentially, you're investing military units to sit out here in open space where they're never going to get attacked to hold onto a territory. And so that's one thing that I liked about Axis and Allies, global war, is that it gets you away from having to do that. But this brings that element back into the game, because the partisans, it was essentially when you start taking troops, so like France here, and I don't know if I said this earlier, but I stopped mid-turn. I didn't finish my turn because I got to get this taken down, and I need to hurry up, quit talking, and get it taken down. But so like the Germans took France, so now the French can roll partisan rolls because that's their home territory, but they can roll for the partisans, and the partisans are just going to hang out and they're going to disrupt. And essentially, if you get 2 partisans together, you can form a militia, and they can kind of cause problems in that territory. And then they can also help support invasions. So if you have a partisan sitting in there, so I mean, just like in the real war, having French resistance and what have you. So if you had a partisan roll into here, and I do have some partisans on the board, and I don't know why I'm pointing to a territory that doesn't have one, but if you had a French partisan and the Allies came in and invaded, they could get a +1 in invading. And this kind of happened over here in Manchukuo and China. So the Chinese nationalists won the Civil War. However, the CCP never surrenders. And so when you're playing with the partisan expansion, you can still generate CCP partisans even after the CCP have lost the Civil War. So it kind of makes it this whole, like, I don't know, it's like a venereal disease. They never go away. And so, but it's kind of fun though. So these are these little purple guys. They're my CCP infantry, and the green ones are my Chinese nationalists. And you can see they're partisans in Manchukuo. So you can have 2 different types of partisans sitting in there too. And I won't cover all the rules of partisans, but it's kind of fun. And essentially the only way to get them out is you have to take infantry or cavalry units, because cavalry are technically armor class, but they let cavalry attack partisans, and you have to attack the partisan to get them away, and that's the only way to get rid of them. So it kind of gives you an extra, I don't know, it kind of gives you something else to do, and it's kind of fun. Let's see, fascists in Croatia. Did not get to this one, so I can't really talk anything about it, but it looked like it was going to be fun. So I'm kind of disappointed. Probably the biggest thing that I wasn't sure about. So apparently you're supposed to take that insert and then move all your stuff and put it right there once the Germans move into Yugoslavia. That seemed like a task. However, it was probably going to happen in the next turn or two, but I'm kind of halfway glad I didn't have to go through that. But Alaskan Warriors, this was kind of fun. It seemed a little more expensive. The one thing is it adds seaplanes, and I'm not playing with seaplanes because I personally don't. I'm not sure if seaplanes are worth the in-game currency, much less my real money going towards buying seaplane models. So yeah, so I probably didn't get as much out of this one because of the seaplane. But if anything, the big thing is it gives you the opportunity to kind of build some rail in Alaska and build into Alaska, and gives you militia up here, and gives you some creative ways to lend lease to the Russians and kind of have a little bit of tie network up here with the Canadians and the Americans. So you could build there. That's a rail bridge, and that's like a air route thing. So it could give you some extra ways to lend lease to the Russians if you're the Americans. So you could lend. So what you're trying to do is set up a lend lease route through the Pacific, rather than trying to come this way or whichever way you want to come. So because lend lease has to go through a port, and then it's got to go to a major factory, or it's got to go through a port. Why did I start talking that? Anyways, so it gives you another lend lease route, in essence. So that can be kind of, I don't know if you're going to get a return on your investment in game from that, but it was kind of fun. I was enjoying playing with that and doing that expansion, because also there again, in the early, you're not getting a lot of IPP as the Americans, but it's like, well, I feel like I want to do something, want to make something. War Plans didn't get to do this one, and kind of once again, the Partisans. I don't actually have the Partisans set. I didn't mention this. I just bought the Partisans chips because the Partisans sets has the Partisan figures. I did not buy that. I just bought these chips, and it seemed to work pretty good. And same thing with the Commanders. I didn't buy the Commander chips because I don't feel like I'm intelligent enough to be able to figure out what the different chips are, and I don't want to like 20 different types of guys out there if I can avoid it. So I just made these little dudes here, kind of the same thing. Man, it focused for a second, but it's kind of the same thing, same method that I did with my flight stand, and just kind of a nail and a washer, epoxied in a washer, and I took some flags I had left over. That's my Commander. And to me, that just kind of stands out a little bit more than I can easily. I can easily see where my commanders are backed up. I kind of like that. And War Plan Z is kind of, not War Plan Z. U.S. War Plan is kind of the same way. You get a few stuff, but none of this stuff I felt like. So I don't have this expansion. I don't have the pieces to it, but I just have the rules. None of this, I didn't get into any of this. I was thinking about maybe executing one of these, but ended up not. Maybe Iceland, but yeah, none of that happened. The Marines, this was a fun expansion. It gives you a couple of new units and gives you like instead for the Americans, rather than just having the Marine markers, it gives you those dark green troops. So then you have the olive drab and the dark green, and so then the dark green's your militia or is your Marine. And it also gives you combat engineers, which I ended up expanding that outside of just a US out into just kind of being a standard unit. And that was kind of fun because the combat engineer gives you essentially a +1 with the defense, and then it gives you a additional, it can pair with another unit on defenses. to give an additional +1 on defense. Africa Corps, I was looking forward to this one. I thought this was going to be really fun. And I got it set up because one of the things, we know in history the Germans were in Africa. I mean, Rommel was there. However, there's no real good mechanic in game to get the Germans from up here down to there, to North Africa. And so what this does is essentially, high-level summary, you're going to be able to either build a couple transports right here through the Italian factory and shipyard, and then you could transport them, or you could lend-lease them through, from your major factory to the naval port to North Africa. So obviously, if you're going to lend-lease it, the Italians are going to have to build a naval port. So that was one of the things that I did as an Italian. Italy went ahead and built a naval port down here in North Africa to be ready for the Germans to come help and assist. However, you have limits on on how many troops you can send, and so I was already kind of budgeting my Germany budget so I could send enough troops down there, because I feel like that's probably not enough. I mean, because really the Italians have the same issue as the Germans trying to get down there, having to transport more troops down there because you don't have a factory. So if anything, it gives the Axis as a whole, not just the Germans or not just the Italians, but it gives the Axis an additional way to get reinforcements in North Africa. And so that's what I was planning on using that one. And of course it brings in self-propelled artillery into the game as well. Sea Lion, I think this is pretty fun. It adds in some different aspects to the game that I think is going to be really good. Adds in some new units, and the big thing that I like is that after the Germans have taken France, after the fall of Paris, you get free stuff. Both the Germans and the British get free stuff, and who doesn't like free stuff? So a lot of the stuff in the set you just get after the Germans take Paris, and you don't have to build it. So that's probably the best thing I like about this set is, I mean, because some of it, it's like, oh wow, that's really cool, but I don't know if I'm going to buy such and such with an expansion set. But this was, I like that. It just gives you, I like the expansions that have a setup change and or give you stuff at certain points in time. And so that was kind of cool. Elite of the Reich. So you have the basic rules, and General Hand Grenade has a long video on this. Well, all of his videos are long, and about half of mine are long, yeah. So he has a video on the Elite of the Reich, and I like this one. It was kind of fun. It gave you something to do. You have the basic rules and the advanced rules, and to me, I was playing with the advanced rules. The basic rules are all stuff like, if you have this, then pay 1 IPP. If you have this here, pay 1 IPP. If you have this there, pay 1 IPP. And that kind of seems expensive and kind of hard to be planning that. Whereas the advanced rules is just like, if you have this here, then upgrade it for free. If you have this there, upgrade it for free. If not, you lost it. And so that's, to me, with as much stuff I was going to do, it may sound counterintuitive, but I was actually playing the advanced rules, and I kind of like that better because, I don't know, it just seemed a little bit easier for me. It may not. The basic may work out better. I don't know, but I like the advanced rules just because it kind of gives you, because then I could look, if I know I'm coming up on 39, in 1937, 38, I was kind of planning already what's going to be in 39, and now that I'm in 39, I can plan what's going to be in 40, and then the next time it's going to be July 41, so I have 2 turns to prepare to get that happening. So it kind of gives me a direction, or I can just have 2 turns to prepare to get that, or choose not to pursue that, whatever it is. Like I said, I like that one. and really essentially all it's doing is these units. It's giving you a +1 on attack and defend, whatever type of unit that it's telling you to place. The lead of the Soviet Union. This is really just kind of a big, nice little, I don't know. Well, I mean, expansion, but it gives you a little bit more depth to the Soviet guard rule, and really kind of like that. Just kind of gives you a little bit more direction. But I like it. Well, like I said, it's really not. It's not so different from the out of box Soviet guard rule that you got to rethink everything entirely. But it does give you some more options, and it's a good balance against the elite of the Reich. And also, what's a good balance of the leader of the Reich is minorities at war. Was playing with this. I heard General Hand Grenade say in one of his games they threw in minorities at war for free since the elite. I mean, it tells you right here that you got to pay 15 IPP to implement it. But I kind of like his idea of if you're adding, which I know this is one of the older ones and the elites ones are newer sets, but if the Russians and Germans don't have to pay for elite troops, and I feel like the Americans shouldn't have to pay for elite troops either. So I just started drawing those, just drawing one at a time, and adding them as I can. And I actually have two that are drawn that I didn't have the right units out, or the timing wasn't right to deploy them. But this seemed good. It really didn't have any conflicts with the Americans, so I can't say, oh yeah, that was worth having it. But I think it'd be good to give them some added bonus of what to be able to compete with everybody else. And then elite fighter squadrons. This one seemed good. A lot of sculpts, a lot of new planes that you get. But really didn't get to play with that one enough. And I did what General Hand Grenade said too on I think him and Rank Carcass's game. They just threw out all the elite fighter squadrons, and they said they had a good time with it. So I'm like, well, hey, that's what I'm going to do too. I did hold in reserve though. There's two over here that I held off. One of the American fighters and that German, because they were supposed to be late war. So I didn't put them, or they were supposed to be 1941, and I just didn't feel right about deploying a troop that was in 1941. And then Warplan Z, once again, Rank Carcass and General Hand Grenade, they both have videos on this. I had this there available for the German player, but he did not bite. But then once it got past January 1939, it was almost like, maybe we should have put that in. I don't know. But yeah, so is what it is. I may have a separate video on that. I'm not sure. But that seemed like a kind of a good one. One thing, I made up this little cheat sheet here, and it's kind of in beta. There's kind of like an alpha draft stage. You can see I've written on it to correct it, but I made a little cheat sheet so then I could see what the different costs are across. This is the Axis build cost, and then this is the Allies build cost. And really, to naval classes, that's where that everything's a little bit different. But yeah, I made that, and that really kind of seemed to help. And then I have my so when I'm playing, my rule book's normally not sitting on the table. I have it sitting here, and then I roll dice and there. Bought that at Hobby Lobby or somewhere, and my wife was like, "Oh, you got that for me?" I'm like, "No, I got it for me for a dice tray." But yeah, so have all that set up. But overall, I felt like this was a fun game. It went really well, and I felt like it was going well. Outside of the oil wars, I feel like that's really the only thing that I'll need to tweak overall. And I did have a couple house rules that I was already playing with. One house rule that I really didn't get to experiment too much with, but just kind of made sense, is I'm saying strategic bombers can't land on islands. Why is that? Well, because it's a huge thing, and you're trying to take these island territories so you can get closer to bomb each other, right? So with that, one thing I'm playing with, and got all my stuff set up to take it down, I'm adding in these airfield tokens. And so the airfields are a cheaper air base that allow you to land a strategic bomber on it. So that's one of the house rules I added in. I think there was a couple others, but that was kind of like the big one that I added in. That changed a few things around just to kind of make it work. Oh, I house ruled the Molotov Rubin pack. I said, you know what? Why should I wait till 39? I mean, why should I wait? If I want to do that earlier, why shouldn't I be able to do it earlier? So I don't know if that's an issue or not, but I did it. So they signed it, and they're still at war, and they're still going along. So they're still at peace. So it kept the peace. Just trying to look to see if there's some other things I added in that I didn't mention throughout the video. But yeah, overall, I feel like this was a good game. I was really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to finding a new house and being able to get this set back up and get it going, and probably add a couple more house rules and things like that on top of it. Really, I got into this game because I felt like I started house ruling Axis and Allies so much to where I turned around and I was like, I think I'm trying to create Global War on the Axis and Allies board, and I think I'd rather play Global War on the Global War board. So then that's where I got this. And so then that's when I started heading this direction. Another thing, medium factories. I stole a Rank Carcass's idea and did the medium factories. And also another thing, I've had my stuff painted for a while now, my ships and planes and what have you. But in addition to, one thing that really helped me out was these tokens, using the pink, white, and purple to to some things, and not, I'm not sure whether if I want to buy it or not. And so this is kind of like an old technology or lesser tech. The pink's a nation specific, and the purple's an advanced tech. Really kind of enjoyed that, and it was, and that kind of added a lot to it without having to reach in my wallet to get out more money for more units. But yeah, just kind of talk about the game. I've been talking about all the expansions, but I really didn't talk about the game much and what was going on. So the Germans, so as I said earlier, the nationalist Spain won the Civil War. So Germany's been building up, and finally attacked Poland and attacked France and took France. And so their next term is going to be pretty good. They also have wartime economy, and they were going to have 70 IPP to spend next round, and so that's going to be pretty impressive. But still at peace with the Soviets. They were probably going to take another turn or two to continue to build up their force, because they had enough to take France and enough to take Poland, but they don't have enough to invade the Soviets. And so that's where they were kind of heading at. Bringing the British into the war, after the Germans brought the British into the war, the Germans started to reconsider, because when you attack France, you bring Britain into the war, you bring the UK, and after the Germans took France, they started to reconsider not doing War Plan Z, because these are all the boats you have. There was a coastal sub out here and 2 submarines that were convoy raiding and got blown up by this destroyer. So the Kriegsmarine is looking weak. So kind of wondering what we should have done. Should have been building boats. We've been focusing on land units and what have you. But I think there's probably a good balance somewhere in there between boats. but I think also needing some Luftwaffe to support, because that's what they would have to depend on now to be able to even think about launching a sea lion invasion. Is they'd have to depend on the Luftwaffe to knock out these two little forces here. So they got it sealed up. So you can't do a end around to get around them. You're going to have to deal with those if you're going to come in through here. And this is where all their defenses are pointed at C Zone 25 anyway. So let's see what else. The Russians, they're just sitting there steady building. Took the first territory in Finland, but they know the German, unlike the real Russians or like in history, they know the Germans are going to break the pack one day, so they're just steadily trying to build up their forces. They did sign the pact with Germany, so the border clashes are ended. When Japan finally decided to start going into China, they got the pact with Russia first. So with that behind their back, they started taking out Chinese. The Japanese, they have a formidable navy, and they're really just starting their invasion in China, really getting going. I think this will be the third term they'd be at war with the Chinese. But really, they're not ready to engage the Allies outright. They need some more Chinese. They just took this one, so this is their first oil derrick. Because that was the one thing that the Japanese felt like they needed to get something that produced oil before they start going to war with the Allies, although one is not going to do it. They're going to have to head down there to the Dutch East Indies and take some of that eventually, but they're just kind of ramping up, gearing up. Let's see. That's pretty much it. I covered the British earlier, and they're sitting there trying to figure out what's going to happen. And kind of the whole British Commonwealth, they're just kind of sitting there with their little bit of money trying to gear up. And then the U.S., they're slowly making money. But that's it for the most part. China's holding on. But that's my game. Hope to get it back out soon sometime. But hope you enjoyed watching this and seeing and hearing kind of how all the expansions went together and what you thought, and what I thought about them, and how I thought they worked well together. So hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you'll stay subscribed. Thanks.